Hello, welcome back to the channel. My name is Lisa Alvin Stoltari, and I am a genealogist and a passionate traveler. Over the last year or so, I've been featuring each fille du roi or king's daughter and getting to know their stories a little bit better. There are over 700 of them, so we've come a long way. We've got a long way to go. Today we're on episode 160. But before we get started, let me show you ways you can support the channel. The first three keep you in the know. Subscribe, like, and notify. The next three help the channel grow. Coffee, Etsy, and Patreon are all ways of showing your support, and I've included the links for you to get to know how you can do that. Let's get started, shall we? So the name of this lady is going to be challenging for those of you who don't speak French. Elisabeth de la Gueripere. And so Pierre is actually stone. So Pierre, think of it like that, and Gueripere. I hope I'm saying it right, actually. That is, this was a viewer request, and I turned to my files, and I saw that I have one of my genealogy associates, this is her great-grandma, so you know who you are. And I recently did a profile on the artist Madonna. This is one of Madonna's great-grandmothers, too. So let me know in the comments below if this is your girl. Let's get to know her a bit, okay? So Elisabeth was born in 1648 in Paris, France. The church that she would have been baptized in would have been the Church of Saint-Sulpice. And it is only slightly smaller than Notre Dame, and thus is actually the second largest church in the city. It's dedicated to Sulpicius the Pious. Construction of the present building, the second church on this site, began in 1646, 2 years before she was born. I love it. During the 18th century, it was also done some renovation. It is found in the 6th arrondissement called Luxembourg, which is an extremely cultural and educational area of Paris. And so one of the parts of the 6th is that it is known for being kind of the thinkers and movers of France and Paris, and Jean-Paul Sartre, Simone de Beauvoir, literature people, François Séguin. It is very, very much part of that intellectual grouping of the city, and absolutely one of the most historic parts of Paris. And this is where our lady comes from. After both her parents pass away, she leaves for France, for New France, and she is on the ship called Le Jean-Baptiste. She arrives in Quebec City on August 15th, 1671. Guess what? She had a dowry worth 500 pounds with her. That is remarkable, really remarkable. So she definitely came from some middle to upper middle, you know, that sort of thing. I don't think she was a noble woman, but definitely came from some means. So the groom that she selected and who selected her, his name was Jean de Rainville, and he was born in 1638 in Tours, in France. His parents were Paul de Rainville and Rollin Poitiers. He's from Normandy. And you can see the circle that I circled on the upper right. And then he's part of the département of Calvados, which I find really neat because we haven't yet, I don't think I've done that département yet. So he comes from a spot that is very much inside of Normandy. And you can see on the upper left how charming and Normandy, you know, that sort of picturesque image that you would have of Normandy. It is the one spot in France, other than Paris, that I have to see. And the church where he would have been baptized, the Church of Tours, is pictured there as well. There is some evidence that Jean would be in New France at least by 1665. He would marry a woman named Suzanne Bedeau, and with whom he would have some children. Let's explore his first family. So his first son, Jean, would go on to marry Marguerite Velay, and he would have 6 children, 5 of whom would make it to adulthood. His second son, Charles, died in infancy. You can see here the 1667 census, where you have Jean de Réville, fermier, farmer, and his wife, Suzanne Badeau, very young, 16. They have Jean, and that is all they have. They have not had Charles at all. And we have Jacques Boudot, which I believe would be Suzanne's relative, Gabrielle Doré, and they have a François Labernard. They have 12 beasts and 40 arpents malades. So that's about 35 acres of land. Remarkable achievement, to be sure. So Jean was a widow, and by October 26, 1671, he is marrying Elisabeth and starting a new life. So the family settles in Beauport, which means beautiful port. This is an illustration of the land divisions. And then you can see where Beauport is on the left-hand side of your screen. I've circled the Beauport and how close it is to Quebec. And then, of course, this is what Beauport looks like when you take a picture from the island Île d'Orléans. You take it from across the river, and it is beautiful. It was started by Robert Gueripere in 1634, so it's one of the oldest areas of Quebec and that region. So definitely worth a look-see. So they would end up having 9 children. Their firstborn, Elisabeth, would go on to marry Nicolas de Launay and had 5 children, only one of whom survived, before her own early death at 30. Marie-Thérèse would marry Antoine Isard and have 7 children, 3 of whom made it to adulthood. Louise would marry Sébastien Gouin and have 8 children, 4 of whom made it to adulthood. Paul married Marianne Roberge and would have 3 children with her, 2 of whom would make it to adulthood. He then would marry Marguerite Giroux and have 7 children, 4 of whom made it to adulthood. Charles would marry Jeanne Suzanne Cabazier and have 2 children, both of whom made it. Marie-Marguerite Godin and have 9 children, 7 of whom made it. Marie-Charlotte married André Corbin and had 10 children, 4 of whom made it. Françoise would die at 2 years of age. René would marry Anne Celeste Charpentier and have 10 children, 5 of whom would make it. Anne Celeste's mother was Marie-Jeanne Toussaint, and she is a fille du roi that we have yet to study. Noël would marry Catherine Mayeux and have 2 children, both of whom would survive. He then would marry Marie-Joseph Caron and have 6 children, 2 of whom would survive. You can see them here in the 1681 census that I've clipped. We have Jean de Rainville, Elisabeth de la Gautière, de la Gueripere, their children, Jean. Now remember, Jean is his child from the previous marriage. We have Elisabeth, Marie, Louise, Paul, and Charles. And you can see that Paul and Charles were twins. And then we have Marie-Charlotte. They have 1 gun, 4 goats, and 18 alfalfa. Not too shabby. So we're looking at 14 to 15 acres of land. Jean would pass away at age 65 in 1704. Elizabeth would live on until 1723, dying at the remarkable age of 75. They are both buried at the Hôtel Dieu Chapel Cemetery that is found in Quebec City. This is Elisabeth's death record. I was not able to find Jean's death record. Here are some of the resources that I use consistently in my research. We have La Société des Filles du Roi, the Society of King's Daughters, of which I am a member and the membership chair. We have the Quebec Genealogical E-Society. We have Nos Origines. We have Généalogie Québec, which is, to me, I couldn't do my work without it. We have Migration, which is a phenomenal website. I get lost in there every time I go. And then we have the Facebook group, Filles du Roi Descendants, a remarkable group to be sure. And so we complete episode 160. Elisabeth would go on to have not only to embrace her husband's first child and adopt him, essentially, would go on to, have her own 9 children, and would live a very long and rich life. And in the end, by 1729, would have a respectable 87 descendants, and of which my viewer is definitely, is definitely part of that. And so I would be very interested to see how many more descendants are of Elisabeth, because, she started off a little later in the program, so we want to see how that grew. So with that being said, we want to thank her for her contribution, bless her memory, and are grateful that she came to our shores and helped our North America grow. Until I see you on episode 161, I bid you adieu et au revoir.